All right, let's dive into a process that is absolutely 100% critical if you're a business moving to SAP S/4HANA. We're talking about fit-to-standard analysis, and today we're going to break down why this is the essential blueprint for getting your project right. Okay, so let's just start with the huge make or break challenge, right? You're bringing in this incredibly powerful new system, but hey, every business is unique. So how in the world do you get that software to fit your specific needs without getting stuck in that classic trap? You know, the one with expensive, complicated custom builds that become a total nightmare to maintain down the line? Well, the answer is a really smart, strategic approach called fit-to-standard analysis. The best way to think about it is as a series of super focused workshops. This is where you sit down and meticulously compare what the software does right out of the box with what your business actually needs to do. The goal is pretty simple but powerful. Find the perfect fit, and whatever you do, avoid reinventing the wheel. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll kick things off with what fit-to-standard really is. Then we'll look at the two main ways you can approach it. We'll cover how to prep for success, peek inside the actual workshops, and finally, see how it all comes together in the final solution design. First things first, let's get to the fundamental why. I mean, before a single line of code is written, before anything gets configured, you absolutely need a plan. This whole process is about defining the how. The real purpose of all these workshops is to get from abstract ideas to a super precise, agreed-upon plan. And let me be clear, the decisions made here are not just suggestions. They literally dictate how the system is going to be built and configured during what's called the realized phase of the project. It's all about turning those what-ifs into a solid here's how. This quote right here, this really gets to the heart of the whole philosophy. The default mindset, the starting point, should always be to stick to the standard process. Why? Well, it's simple. Every single tweak, every little change you make adds complexity and creates more maintenance work for years and years. The real goal here is to hunt for only those changes that are truly, business-critically 100% necessary. Now, here's a key thing to understand. Not everyone is starting from the same place. The fit-to-standard process is flexible, and it adapts depending on whether you're starting completely fresh or upgrading a system you already have. So let's break down these two very different paths. So on one hand, you've got a new implementation, sometimes called a greenfield project. You're starting with a clean slate. Here, the whole focus is on adopting SAP's best practices as your new normal. The workshops are all about understanding those standard ways of working and then pinpointing the few places you absolutely have to do something different. Then, on the other hand, you have a system conversion. This is an upgrade. You're bringing your old data and processes along for the ride, and here the focus totally shifts. It's about checking out all the cool new features in S/4HANA, and crucially, figuring out what to do with your old processes that just won't work the same way anymore. You know, amazing workshops don't just magically happen. They're always the result of some serious prep work. Success in this whole thing really begins long before anyone even steps into that first meeting. You've got to do the homework. And you can see right here how that prep work is totally different depending on your path. From a new implementation, you're doing a deep dive into the SAP best practices guides and setting up a clean, ready-to-go sandbox system. But for a system conversion, the prep is all about analyzing what SAP calls simplification items, which is basically their list of, hey, this has changed and you really need to pay attention to it. You'll use tools like the SAP Readiness Check, and your sandbox is actually a copy of your old system that's been converted. The one thing both paths have in common, though, is that the consultants have to get in there and get the system ready to demo. All right, the homework is done. Now let's get to the main event, the workshops themselves. This is where the magic happens. This is where all that analysis meets action, and the real decisions finally get made. A typical workshop follows a really clear, logical flow. First, the consultant actually shows everyone the standard process in the system. As the business experts are watching, their job is to spot the gaps. You know, the places where the standard way of doing things just doesn't meet a critical business need. Then, those gaps and requirements get written down with tons of detail. And finally, and this is so important, everything gets prioritized. And you guessed it, the focus inside the workshop also changes depending on your paths. For that new implementation, the demo is all about showing off the SAP best practices, really trying to guide the business toward adopting them. A conversion, though, that's different. You're demoing new features and making really key decisions, like deciding whether to switch from old-school transaction codes to the slick new SAP Fiori apps. The documentation is pretty similar for both, but again, that conversion path has that extra focus on dealing with those simplification items. So, the workshops are finally over. You probably have a mountain of notes, a long list of requirements, and a bunch of priorities. So, now what? Well, the final phase is all about turning that potential chaos into a concrete, official design document. The team now gets to work preparing the formal solution design. This is like the official recipe, detailing exactly how every single requirement that was identified is going to be handled. For a conversion project, this specifically has to include the plan for all those simplification items. And for both paths, visualization is absolutely key. We're talking mock-ups, process flow diagrams, things that let everyone see and approve exactly how the final solution will look and work wherever changes are being made. Okay, so after all of this work, all the prep, all the workshops, all the design, it all boils down to one single incredibly important thing that you walk away with. And that deliverable is the prioritized backlog. This backlog is basically your project's Bible. It's the single source of truth. It's got every requirement, every customization, every technical change that needs to happen. But even more important than that, it clearly states the priority of every single item, and it includes estimates for how much work each one is going to take. So really, you can think of this backlog as the official architectural blueprint for the project. It's not just some list of ideas, it's the instruction manual that tells the development and configuration teams exactly what to build, in what order, and how tricky it's going to be. A really well put together backlog is the difference between a chaotic, stressful project and one that runs smoothly and predictably. So, as we wrap this up, think about this for a second. After going through this whole intense process of questioning every change and prioritizing every need, you're left with a crystal clear blueprint for your project. The real question for your business then becomes, what is that one special thing, that one unique requirement that's so vital to how you compete and win that you truly can't live without customizing it? That's the real power of fit to standard analysis. It gives you the clarity to answer that really tough question with total confidence.
If you're anywhere